live on YouTube.
Martin looks so relaxed.
Yeah, already at a beach or something?
Reclining. Smiling.
No beach, too cold. Skiing maybe,
Chair.
but
There
there's
we
no
go.
snow.
Skis too.
Snowshoes.
You're good.
All
Thanks,
right.
Jesse. Carrie, I'll give it over to you to open up the meeting.
Hello and welcome to the Chelsea Land Use Committee. My name's Carrie Keenan. Jeffrey LaFrancois and I are co-chairs of Chelsea Land Use Committee, which usually meets monthly. This is our March meeting. MCB4 has adopted a hybrid meeting policy whereby we will meet in person with a remote option. All community board meetings will require an in-person quorum to come to order and conduct business. Committee members are expected to attend meetings in person unless they have a disability or an extraordinary circumstance as defined by the New York State Open Meetings Law. Excused committee members attending remotely can fully participate in the meeting and must leave their cameras on. Due to public health best practices and space limitations, we encourage members of the public to join virtually. And those who are attending remotely can fully participate in the meeting. The MCB4 hybrid policy can be found on the MCB4 website. Tonight's meeting is being recorded and is currently live streaming on YouTube. As always, we ask for decorum tonight so that all voices can be heard, and remind everyone that we have a limited time at the space where we are. We have 3 items on the agenda. I'm gonna turn it over to Jeffrey to take up the first one, which is hopefully very exciting.
Thanks, Carrie. Good evening, everybody. Jeff LaFrancois, co-chair along with Carrie. Happy to be here this evening. First up is indeed an exciting, hopefully, update from our friends, the Department of Sanitation, regarding the LPC designated 128 West 17th Street. We were long a part of the designation of this building, in large part thanks to the work of historian Eric K. Washington. This is former Colored School for Girls #4. And tonight we have Superintendent Stephen Caruso from the Department of Sanitation's Community Affairs. So over to you for an update, sir.
So much. Thank you very much. And thank you so much for having me here this evening. Again, Superintendent Stephen Caruso. I'm with the Department of Sanitation Community Affairs. It is a pleasure to be here this evening. I come tonight with good news. So regarding former Colored School #4, I know that we're all aware of it, but just let me give you a little bit of a background before I give you some current updates and then what we're going to be looking at in the future. All right. So former Colored School #4 was utilized as a section house for the Department of Sanitation. At one time, section houses were all over the city, and we use them as almost like sub garages in the sense that workers would go there. They would sign in and sign out. They would clean up. They would take their breaks, their lunch. They would meet with their supervisors. Although they still exist, they do not have the same significance as they once did. So this particular piece of property is in need of some rehab. And the news that I bring you tonight is that we were able to secure complete funding for a renovation of this property. All right, so that is fantastic news. I know that's something that we've all been very involved with for quite a period of time now. So this is an achievement. All right, so I'm going to tell you where we currently stand in the process and where we're going to be in the next few years. Okay, so as of right now, we are in the construction planning and design process. We'll be there through next year, and then construction will start thereafter. Okay. By 2029, if not sooner, we will have a fully usable blank canvas. Okay. And by blank canvas, I mean a safe, clean, and usable space. All right. Again, fantastic news. As far as the future use goes, I think that's a little premature to have that conversation. I'm sure a lot of people may have some questions regarding that, but being that we're still in the construction planning and design phase, we're going to shelf that conversation for right now. But nonetheless, we're off to a good start. Now, I know that we had contacted the community board, Jesse, not too long ago to say that we were going to be putting up a shed in front of the building. We have not done that just yet. We will be doing that in the near future, and Jesse will let you know when we're going to be doing that. We're going to have a shed to maybe store some construction materials in there for some immediate repairs that need to take place. But rest assured, we're going to be in contact with the community board as we go through this entire process. All right. So if anyone has any questions, I'm more than happy to take them. But again, as we go through this entire process, we'll be in communication.
Grab that mic. Pamela, go ahead. Calling on you first. Push, there's a button on it. There you go, and it'll turn.
Okay, hi.
Hi.
Thank you so much for this.
You.
I have a million questions. The first one has to do with the roof
Okay.
and the parapet walls
Okay.
and the roof drain.
Okay.
Has that work already been done? Is the building's not taking on water like it has been over decades now with it pouring in through that drain?
Okay. That I have to find out and circle back around with you. I don't have all of those details with me tonight. My focus is more or less just the future of what we have going on here. But if I can't answer the question tonight, I promise you that I will get back to you.
Okay, what would you like to know from me to get back?
I was just gonna say, it sounds like you probably have a lot of very technical construction questions.
Yes, I do.
Well, yes.
Indeed, I do.
So Kim, why don't you send them to me and I will make sure the gentleman gets
Okay,
Can we do that?
that way.
okay. All right. So we don't need to spend any more time on this because I guess I have to do it that way instead. But I do have lots of questions. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Questions in the room? Anybody online?
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Superintendent, for being here tonight. The work of this committee, of Eric, Mr. Washington, and also with thanks to the council member who is a strong advocate for this as well. We are very grateful for this very good update with many more technical details to come from the contractors and the relevant spokes that can speak to that. If anybody does have questions in line, sort of in the technicalities of things like Pam was referencing, send those over to Jesse and we'll get them to you. That sounds good, Superintendent? Perfect.
Jeffrey, Eric's hand
he's
is up
here.
online. Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Yep.
Let's bring him over.
Yeah.
There he is, tiny.
Hi, Eric. The floor is yours.
Hi, how are you? I was trying to figure out the little hand thing. Thank you. Can you elaborate a little bit on, well, a couple of things. I appreciate the update on the blank canvas design, and you gave the date for 2029, so that's like 5 years from now. Can you elaborate on what the blank canvas is? So I'm assuming that you have is a blank canvas mean that it's being restored back to how it was being used by sanitation when it was in active use, or to some other special specifications or what?
Yes. So, okay, to clarify, it would be complete by 2029, if not sooner. And when I say a blank canvas, it's going to be a clean, safe, usable space. As of right now, we're still in the planning phase, planning and design. So what exactly it's going to look like when it's complete, I cannot tell you that tonight. But as we progress, we will be sharing all this information with the community board. But as of right now, in this moment, I cannot tell you exactly how it's going to look.
Okay, and also previously, I know sanitation indicated that it was amenable to relinquishing the building. So where in that time frame is that still the case, or does sanitation expect to remain in control of the building through 29, or are you looking into other possibilities of changing hands, or what's the conversation that's happening about that?
So I hadn't been made aware of that, but I will look into that and circle back around.
Okay, thank you.
My pleasure.
And I just wanted to ask, when you have a plan and a design, you'll come back to us?
Yeah. So again, we're gonna be in communication throughout the process. I'm not just gonna give you this information tonight and then you're not gonna hear from us again. We have a great relationship with the community board and the council members. So this is gonna be an ongoing communication and conversation as we've had over the past few years regarding it.
And you work in consultation with LPC, I assume, now that it's a designated landmark, correct? To make sure that like certain things in the building are not removed or demolished, or like the windows, for example.
So we are in conformance with the landmark guidelines.
Okay.
We're working with them, yes.
Okay, good. Thank you.
So-
And
I have a question, if I may, for Mr. Washington. Do you have any designs, layouts of the original school building?
Yeah, am I still live?
You are.
Okay, hi. I don't have original layouts. I have images that were part of the Board of Ed records, which are they were sort of generic images of what the model schoolhouses looked like.
From the outside.
Also by floor, by each floor. They're not extremely detailed, but they are they've got some details. And that was part of my question in terms of having a clean, what would you call it, clean slate, a blank canvas. Is there any effort to, or if there is any effort, how are you going about that, determining what interior components of the building might be original that you might want to have retain before creating this blank canvas? Or some sort of consultation that, we could look at what records might be available, including, what I've got and anybody has access to those, and possibly some others that might be in say, the municipal archives holdings or whatever, before everything is just wiped clean.
Thank you. You asked the question in a way much better than I could have.
Yes, thank you. To Carrie's and Eric's questions as well, we members of this committee had the opportunity to tour that building, and some of us have recollections of a few historic remnants that still exist within the building that refer back to because there are some moldings around doorway, entranceways, and particularly on the second floor. There, and the windows, as Carrie mentioned, from the second floor up are definitely worth rescuing and salvaging. And we just hope that, as you've referred to, it's a little alarming when we hear clean slate, because that means wiping out everything, every reference to the building's history that is visible now. It would be very important for us to be able to know that those things aren't going to be wiped out in this process of clean slate.
Okay. The message is well received. I will absolutely make sure to bring that back. But just to be clear, some of these items we want to, are you requesting that we try and bring them back to their original condition and leave them within the building, or that we salvage them and just make sure that they're not discarded during the process?
Well, one of the things I wanted to add to Pamela's comments is that working within the framework of landmarks preservation does not necessarily entail interior work. And I think what Pamela's talking about is making sure that we preserve some of the interior qualities that aren't within the LPC guidelines, and making sure you take those steps as well.
Okay.
And whether and I'll speak now, and Pam could disagree or agree with me, but whether they're preserved in place or preserved and restored and preserved in place, or if they're utilized in another function of the building, recognizing their contribution to the building, may be a backup alternative to that.
Okay.
Eric, sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. So I've been trying to get access again since last summer. And part of the reason was so that we could go through and sort of systematically take note of what might be original, ask questions, somebody who's much more knowledgeable than myself, to ask those kind of questions, and have some sort of discussion with sanitation about what we're talking about before, things just start getting ripped up and thrown out. Another part of that is there's been some recent activity going on in the building, and I didn't see any work permits, so I couldn't learn from any of the literature that's usually posted out of a workplace what was going on. Can you speak to what was happening there in terms of that work? And going on, will there be, communication as work is happening so that it is transparent what exactly is being done? Is it asbestos abatement or whatever? So I guess that's two-part, is it possible to get access and have some sort of, another tour where we could sort of systematically go floor by floor and say, this is something, that is really worth retaining. Can we go about doing that?
So I know that we have done, there has been an ask to do tours in the past, and we were concerned about the safety of those entering the building. So that did complicate the situation. If that's something that you want to do, I will bring that back. I cannot commit to anything tonight, but I'm sure if you spoke to Jesse and perhaps asked us and named a few people who may be there and their qualifications as to knowing the history of any of the items which are inside the building, it would help me to present that case to the right people. But again, if it's a safety concern and it's a liability to have people inside of the building, that could create a little bit of a complication.
We've already been in the building and the building was deemed structurally sound, so it shouldn't probably be an issue. But if you could bring that back and ask, that would be great. Thank
Sure,
you.
absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, just a couple of quick things. It's a building that's been used differently from what it used to be. By the way, I might actually have some images and drawings potentially. I can't commit to it, but we've done a whole study on that building. So I should be able to pull that up and I'll share it with Jesse and he will probably forward them to you. There's
Excellent.
some images inside and there's sort of a lot of divisions. There are walls that used to be there. And I don't know what is there now because I haven't been there. But one of the things that I would recommend, and I don't know if it's a question or not, but typically what you would do for a building like that, you'll have a physical conditions report being put together.
Mhm.
Then you will have an RFP, or you can combine the two together into one RFP, and then you'll select a design team. And the design team will be given the guidelines in terms of what all they must respect in terms of LPC requirements and historical sort of preservation part of it. Now, community might want to suggest that we want to preserve what is already there,
Okay.
and maybe we don't recreate what's been lost. But that's the conversation that's going to happen only after we look at the physical conditions report. So I think the first step would be for sanitation to actually hire somebody and do just pure physical survey.
Okay.
No changes, no destruction, nothing. And I think that would definitely help this conversation to go much better.
Okay. I'll
Thank
bring
you.
that back. Yes, thank you.
Can I make one suggestion?
Go ahead, Jesse.
Just to Eric's point about, I think what we normally do have with projects is ask the developers, therefore being you in this, would be a look ahead every either 2 weeks or once a month to provide what Eric is asking, which is to say, like, what are we going to see the next month? Are we going to see, 10 guys out on the roof? We're going to see interior work here. You're going to hear this, you're going to hear that. So I suggest that maybe take that back. Okay, thanks.
And I think also Carrie and I were just doing this magic thing of chatting on the notes that we shared together during the meetings. I think we're going to send you an admin letter once all this comments from the committee. Pamela, if you can get Jesse this stuff, Carrie and I have some notes. It might be easier just so that way we have our questions. It doesn't have to be a vote of the committee, right? These are just questions. It's admin sending that through because maybe then the contractor comes or whatever they decide to do in terms of the work, that can be the next step of updates, but at least we have something that we've transmitted to them. General head nod, everybody on that admin letter?
I have
Yes.
probably 50 or 60 photographs that I made during those tours. Would that be useful information if I can put that
I mean, if they're
together
current
and show it?
photographs, I'm not sure that would be useful unless you want to reference something within them and sort of
Exactly.
that's fine. As long
Exactly.
as
I mean,
long
but
as you
honestly,
make
they
the
might
reference.
see.
I think as long as you make the reference point and include the photograph, that's something we could consider using.
Okay. thank
Okay. Superintendent, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Carrie, anything else on this? Okay, great. Thank you, everybody. Good news with a ways to go, but more to come. Up next, an update on the Midtown South Mixed Use Plan. This is a rezoning being put forth by the city, very much sort of part of as a housing package under the sort of umbrella of City of Yes, to change the zoning within 4 different quarters of what's considered Midtown South. It really very much affects a lot more of CB5 than it does of Board 4. I am going to tee it up for Mr. Devlin because Hell's Kitchen Land Use has taken this up earlier this month. They also received the presentation from the Planning Commission. As it relates to Chelsea land use jurisdiction, the area that is being considered is from 24th to 26th Street, from 6th over almost to 7th Avenue. So a very small sliver in the CB4 Chelsea boot, if you will. So Paul, over to you for other updates from Hell's Kitchen Land Use and any relevant things to bring in here.
Thanks, Jeffrey. Yeah, and in terms of the Halsey bit, there is a section west of 8th Avenue, which is why it came to our committee as opposed to this committee. There's more as you go north. The district that they're looking at goes up to 42nd Street. And so there's a little bit more in Hell's Kitchen, not a lot more. Most of it is in District 5, so we don't have that much impacted from it. But just to give everybody an overview of what's happening is there are 4 major quadrants in Midtown South that are zoned M1 manufacturing, and they're looking to do some conversions so they can allow for residential in that area. This is very similar to what the Garment Center District Alliance came to us with in January of 2023. Many of the issues are identical. So the letter we wrote in January of 2023, you can see is going to be the model for the letter we'll be submitting. What we want to focus on are the issues of promoting affordable housing, promoting live-work environments, focusing on converting any of the hotels into permanent residential, maintaining FAR limitations in the area, maintaining bulk and height restrictions in the area to preserve the character of that Garment Center district. We wanted to put this still some missing components from their last presentation to us that we really want to focus on incentivizing conversion versus demolition to make sure that we don't have demolition of a lot of those kind of classic buildings. And in order to accomplish that, we're seeking to get better mapping of what's overbuilt and underbuilt, because if they do shift the FAR and there's something that's underbuilt and it gets torn down, we don't want to see pencil glass towers sticking up on mid-block. We're also looking to expand west of 8th. If you think about the kind of the topography of those neighborhoods, those buildings west of 8th are very similar to what's east of 8th, but it's zoned differently. So it's not a part of this rezoning. We're asking them to incorporate some of these guidelines in those commercially zoned areas west of 8th that if you're walking down the street, you wouldn't notice a difference in the zone change. So that's kind of the overview and where we stand. Because it is a citywide rezoning, this will be a letter coming from full board, and we just wanted to make sure everybody on this committee was up to date on everything.
Thank you, Paul. I see Betty's hand, but anybody in the room with a question on this first? Biren?
Probably more of a question for you, Paul. The FAR 15 that was mentioned, and there was a response to that we should probably not push for it because that would increase speculation and people with lower FAR would start demoing their buildings because they would want to aim for higher FAR, and that's something that we should sort of point out.
That's a great point, Viren, and we did discuss that quite extensively, which is why we're asking for the maps of what's overbuilt versus underbuilt, because the majority of the things in that area are currently overbuilt beyond 15 FAR. And because they're also built before, it was 1977, 72, whatever the zoning law is, a lot of that can be converted to fully residential, exceeding the 12 FAR cap, because it's already built, it's already in existence, that can all be converted. So we're kind of walking that fine line of finding a way to build more housing, but also avoid the incentivization to demolish something to build something bigger on an underbuilt lot. And that's exactly why we're asking for overbuilt versus underbuilt and more clarification on that. But they are looking to go to 15 FAR, But any new construction could not have residential to 15 at this point. So
And one of the other things sort of that came up, that when you have buildings which already are overbuilt, and if they have maximum FAR, that's 15 or whatever that might be, and if you want to reduce the FAR for residential use to 12, you could also think about a hybrid version where you actually have community services, schools, pharmacies, whatever you have, right? And I think that might actually get you the balance that you want and keep this a kind of a mixed use character of Midtown South in place. And some of the businesses might survive if we do that. And I think that's something that we should add. Sorry, go ahead.
we're in agreement that because it is a mixed use rezoning, that's exactly what they're striving for is for mixed use. So I think your statement inherently implies what the plan already is, that we are looking to have these buildings be mixed use, to have a combination of resident. And why don't we, because we're going back and forth and we're taking up a lot of time on the topic, and why don't you send me notes that you think you want to be included, and I'll include them in whatever we're sending out from Edge.
What I'm saying is that when the buildings are already 15 FAR, and if you convert, correct, if you convert the whole thing to residential, then you're pushing the FAR up for residential portion of it. So what I'm saying is that you do residential only up to 12. And then beyond that, it becomes mixed use. That's what I'm proposing.
But I think part of the interest is that we could actually get more units legally by going above, because the buildings are already over 12 FAR. This has happened in Lower Manhattan already with a lot of the conversions that have happened because of the 425 provisions down there, is that buildings already built to, code, right? A commercial building above 12 FAR can legally be converted to residential, even though it's above 12 FAR, because the building already exists. So I wonder why we would seek to not have it become all housing.
Well, the argument that I heard, and maybe I'm totally wrong, but DCP was trying to say that we were effectively going beyond FAR of 12. And therefore, we should introduce the FAR 15. And that's why we are saying, don't do that, because for the new construction, if you do that, smaller buildings will sort of start going into demolitions and speculation will sort of kick in. So that's the whole point. So what I'm saying is that if you don't want to entertain the idea of 15 FAR, you can, within that building, retain the 12 FAR.
Right, the envelope is there.
And then add hybridity to that. And that's what
Absolutely. I see Paul nodding. So definitely, if you want to send him a couple of things, we can work something in. Thank you. Betty.
Hi. Very good, Paul. I like the points that you were making. I would like to suggest, if they have, I've gone through the presentation, I've looked at the whole presentation, and I think it would be useful if there could be some graphics showing the density of the buildings in compared to the surrounding neighborhood. In other words, if you're going to FAR of 15, what would it look like? What would those buildings, how high would those buildings be? And look at the surrounding community. Obviously, I live in Penn South, so I'm interested in how that would relate to Penn South, which has 21-story buildings. And the other related to Penn South, I was wondering if city planning had particularly targeted I see that they had a lot of presentations to different stakeholders, that had they actually gone to Penn South or solicited comments from Penn South, because even though we're not in the study area, we're close to the study area. So those are my two thoughts.
Thanks, Betty. And I wish I worked for DCP so I could answer you.
Well,
No,
I know, but you
I
could
do know
write
that they did a series.
You could write in a letter that it would be very good if we could have some graphics which show what these buildings might look like with the increased FAR. So the public would realize what it might be like. Because just saying FAR 15, you know, most people just don't know what that would look like.
No, I appreciate that. And that the issue is that the presentations are pretty much done now. So then they've done a series of community workshops. They've met with housing people, they've met with residents, they've met with businesses. They've had a whole series of these public meetings already. So I don't know that they would revise the presentation. But again, I go back to the question that we raised at the committee of overbuilt versus underbuilt. We want to really understand what parcels could increase in size and what that would look like. And if there would be development rights transferable, our biggest fear on our committee was to avoid those pencil glass towers that stick up mid-block that have impacted many mid-block areas in our district and in District 5. And we don't want to see that repeated. And that was sort of the message we made very loud and clear to them when they were with us, is that that can't happen.
But not to beat a dead horse, Paul, but there will be a DEIS or scoping document. I forget how they're doing it this time, but you know, they could add more illustrations in the next version of this proposal.
Betty, my understanding is it's a ULURP for rezoning. So the draft EIS
Oh, it's done?
process is not this process. So we're at the
Oh, okay.
planning, the rezoning stage of public comment for rezoning.
Anyway, all right, those are my thoughts.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jesse's correcting me, so I'm wrong. I'm glad to be corrected.
You remember the meeting, he said the scope was actually starting this upcoming month. Remember? I can't hear you, Paul, I'm sorry.
So just right, we have the public, they've done a bunch of public outreach.
They've done, yeah, they did the outreach meetings, but the actual scoping
The
is,
scoping process starts.
we'll start shortly.
So this is our comment on the scope.
Yeah, it hasn't been released yet, so like, we have to figure that out timing wise,
Okay.
but
So Betty,
This was more about-
yes, I'll add more graphics. I'll add a request for more graphics.
Thank you.
Mike?
Sorry, my apologies.
Mike?
Yeah, hi. Paul, just refresh my recollection here on the presentation that I watched, but I don't remember it all. We're talking about with respect to new construction, we're talking about the 15 FAR with respect to commercial buildings, right? And 12 still as to residential. Is that right?
Yes, but that it ties into what Viren's comments are, right? If we're going to have 15 FAR and we get a mixed use, so 12 of that could be residential and 3
Right.
could be commercial. But we're not
Exactly.
going above 15 FAR with new construction. And again, our focus wants to be on conversion, not demolition. So that's one of
Right.
the things that we're going to talk about.
Good. No, just wanted to be clear. Thanks.
Sorry, I was making eyes to Jesse to make sure I was right.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you, Paul. Sounds like a couple of reasonable additions to include there, and we'll be good to go. Carrie, anything else from you on this topic?
Sorry,
Okay,
lost my
Pamela?
place. Sorry.
Okay.
What a wicked tool this is. So I just want to remind everyone that back in the mid-90s, when the Chelsea zoning plan went into effect from 7th to 10th Avenues in Chelsea, from 6th to 7th Avenue was cut loose for development for residential. It had been light industrial, and we lost almost all of the small local AIR loft buildings in those blocks all the way from 14th to about 26th Street. They're gone, and in their place are very large condominiums for the very wealthy. I don't know if there is any affordable housing in any of those buildings, but that's what happened to us, and that's just the handwriting on the wall. That's it.
So not something we can add into the letter, but thank you for the commentary, Pamela. Any other questions on this? We're going to move on to our final official agenda item for the evening, which this came about because the Landmarks Preservation Commission was planning to issue regulations in response to the Department of Transportation's outdoor dining regulations. Open dining has been codified by the city council. It will be a seasonal program, basically 8 months of the year. And as it relates to applications in landmark districts, LPC is coming up with a response to what restaurants can and cannot do, really just around the specifics of attachments and placements and all that kind of stuff. So it may surprise you all to hear that we asked Dave to provide an update in response to this. Now, key factor being there was supposed to be a hearing tomorrow at LPC on this. However, LPC, I think it's okay to say this, Jesse, right? They admitted they were, well, they are delaying the hearing to solicit feedback like ours. And when the hearing is scheduled, we will submit testimony and somebody will be there to testify. But I think in the interim, based on what David shares tonight, we can see whether or not we want to wrap that into a letter and transmit that beforehand. So Dave, over to you.
Yeah, the hearing has been rescheduled for April 16th. Yeah. Jesse, I don't know if you could bring up that website I sent you a link to. The LPC rule change is an overlay on the broader changes to the rules about outdoor dining. And it has to do with sidewalk cafes and what are called roadbed cafes. And I don't know if you know this, but in November, all of those existing roadbed cafes have to be taken down. They'll stay down until the beginning of April, and they can reappear from the beginning of April to the end of November every year. They'll be of a much more temporary nature. There are diagrams that go along with that. As Jeffrey said, the LPC rule change really just has to do with the way they would actually interface with landmark buildings and surfacing in historic districts. So if you need an electrical conduit coming out of the face of a building in a historic district, Landmarks needs to approve that. If it's providing lighting, say, or heating for a sidewalk cafe or one of the new roadbed cafes. If there's an awning that's supported over a sidewalk cafe from a landmark building, they need to give approval to that. Jesse? Yeah, if you could share the screen. We'll scroll down a little bit here. Right, and we'll start with sidewalk cafes. If you scroll down a little bit farther and go to sidewalk cafe materials basics. And scroll up so we can see the image. This is the minimum that's required for a sidewalk cafe going forward. There needs to be some kind of demarcation of the area. It can just be a stanchion with ropes and outdoor tables. Needs to be ADA accessible. And if we now go back one and go to extras for sidewalk cafes. Next one down. You can see how things might need to plug into the face of the building. So that electrical attachment at the top is something Landmarks would have to approve, or the attachment of the canopy at right. And now if we could go back one slide and go over to roadbed basics. It's the middle one on the left. And scroll up a little. This is the minimum that will be required for any outdoor dining in a roadbed. And those are like jersey barriers around three sides. They can be covered with something that looks better, but this is the minimum that the city now requires. And if we go back to roadbed extras, this shows the maximum that you can do. You can clad those barriers. You can put planting on top. The barriers themselves can't be more than 42 inches tall. You can put a screen which is supposed to be transparent, at the side that's next to traffic. And I think it's more there for psychological purposes to create a sense of separation from the moving traffic. You can have a covering that can be canvas, or it can be a more rigid material, lighting, heating. And on the right, you see a post that kind of goes up and turns right and goes over the sidewalk. That suggests how electricity or even plumbing could be given to this thing. LPC mentions plumbing. I don't know what that would be for, maybe irrigation for the planting. But any connection of that back to the face of the building, you'd have to get approval from the Landmarks Commission for. On these barricades, in both cases, you can include a logo and signage, but only for the establishment. You know, these are not controversial rule changes. Often we express our concerns to Landmarks if something is being taken out of the public review process and given over to staff approval where we won't have a chance to weigh in. You know, this is pretty inconsequential. I checked with Historic Districts Council, and they were concerned that the language in the LPC rules should, in addition to saying that any penetration or attachment to granite sidewalks needing approval from LPC, that we should add to that any sidewalk vault lights, which we really only have in the Ladies Mile Historic District, and those are already protected by being in a landmark district. The Historic Districts Council is suggesting that landmarks also regulate the color of these barriers that go around the seating, so that there might be a limited number of pre-approved colors or materials. And that if you want to deviate from those, you can, but you would need to get landmarks approval, which is a little bit of a philosophical question. So, you know, I'm not entirely sure we would want to do a letter. I'll open it up to discussion if anyone wants to weigh in.
Thanks, David, for that overview. I guess I have a quick bit of comment that if we do put something in writing, I would suggest that we make sure that nothing is allowed to be affixed to the sidewalk for a number of reasons. But whether the sidewalk is historic or not, I don't think that's a good idea. And I'm not sure there's many outdoor dining examples right now on the sidewalk. Roadbed is different, that have a whole bunch of things that are like drilled in and affixed to the sidewalk. I think we should say no to that.
Yeah, I think there's even some discrepancy in landmarks language. They talk about everything being removable.
Which is what DOT is requiring also. So maybe they're just reflecting DOT's language as well.
Right. I think that's a good idea.
Oh, we'll start with Mike and then we'll go to Betty. Mike?
Yeah, David, are all of these approvals staff level? I mean, in every case? Would anything ever rise to the level of a commission approval?
Yes, if you want to deviate from what they're talking about here, then you would need to pursue something, you know, through a public hearing.
Oh, really?
So these would otherwise be, I'm assuming, staff level approvals. I can't imagine they're going to have public hearings for, you know, electrical boxes on the face of a building. I can read you the pertinent part of the rules. It says, if a sidewalk or roadway cafe includes the installation of a component, including but not limited to an awning, overhead covering, heat lamp, light fixture, or electrical or plumbing conduit that is physically attached to a building or penetrates through the exterior of a building or through an interior landmark, or attaches to or penetrates through a bluestone or granite paver, the owner must submit an application for such component to the LPC and must not install such component until LPC has issued a certificate, permit, report, or other approval for such installation.
Okay, but you know,
then it says all proposals that do not satisfy those requirements must be reviewed and approved by the Landmarks Preservation Commission by a certificate of appropriateness, which does require a public hearing.
Okay.
Thanks, Mike. Betty?
Hi, thanks, David. My question is that when I'm walking around Chelsea, the outdoor cafes, most of them are, they're 100% on all sides have coverings one way or the other. Where does that topic fit?
Betty, sorry, David, just to jump in. You're talking about roadway,
Well, I
right? The
was
dining sheds mostly?
I guess I wasn't thinking about roadway versus sidewalk, just the ones, whatever they are.
Well,
They
DOT's
seem to be
updated
totally
regulations,
enclosed.
the DOT regulations prohibit full enclosure, which what we saw many of them sort of morph into as more time went by post, height of 2020. And so as that one example showed, any roadbed dining, which is very much meant to be seasonal, so set up and then taken down, you can't have a hard roof. You can't have walls higher than that 42-inch barricade. And so the same goes for the sidewalk. You can't be building a structure in the way that you have today. It all has to be very passive is not the right word, but not have a sense of permanence like that we see them out there today. And so even separate from LPC, that's the new DOT regulation.
And basically it wouldn't be a full enclosure then.
No, something like what you see outside of the Empire Diner. That's going to be gone as of the end of November and not coming back.
Okay, that's
What
gonna
you'll
be,
see will look like what Jesse showed in the illustration with the barriers around the seating and maybe a covering over the top and a screen wall that has to be transparent between the seating and the active lanes of traffic.
okay, I'm glad for that clarification, because just about all the ones that I see out in Chelsea where I live have 100% enclosures.
Yeah,
So
it's going to be a very big change.
That's history. That's history.
Yes, for DOT as well.
Yeah, the rule does say that enclosed sidewalk cafes, including alterations to or replacement of existing installations, are not covered by this rule. So I think some enclosed sidewalk cafes will remain.
And sidewalk cafes, don't forget, those existed pre-pandemic under a permit from the Department of Consumer Affairs. So this program is sort of morphed out of that into the jurisdiction of DOT.
Okay, all right. It's kind of complicated. Yeah, I see. Okay, thank you.
Marty?
I just heard you say Chelsea Square stays because that's one of those enclosed sidewalk cafes that's been there for a long time. My question is about bike safety. I've been to a number of roadway cafes that have a bike lane between the cafe and the sidewalk, and it's dangerous as hell. So I'm wondering if there's any thought about that.
I don't think that's going to be possible under this. One of the requirements for the roadway cafes is that they have a floor that's flush with the sidewalk. So people in wheelchairs can roll right off the sidewalk without having to go down the curb into the floor of the dining area. So I don't know how that could coexist with a bike lane.
Marty, certainly under this LPC rule, that will not be touched. I guess the LPC will not have jurisdiction on that. That's a DOT Transportation Committee thing. I bet you could send Christine and Jesse Greenwald a note and they may have an answer back on you. I can't even speak to the specific of whether or not what the updated bike lane regulation with curbside dining is going to be. But it would fall under the DOT direction separate from LPC.
Thanks.
Brad?
Hey, everybody. David, thanks for looking into this. Do they apply once and it gets approved and then it's good for 5 years, or every single year, every one of these businesses has to reapply?
That's a good question. I would guess that the approval would carry over from 1 year to the next. Do you know, Jeffrey?
I don't know, but I think this is something we should come up with a recommendation as, and I would hope we would recommend that it go longer than a year, because I can tell you many of us probably love restaurants that will be contemplating whether or not they're going to pursue this, given the investment it's going to take, and then the storage you're going to be required to have if you do anything outside. So I hope that we would consider, a 3-year permit or a 5-year permit, right? Something like that. Out of the sheer sort of economics of the business that it takes to make these things happen.
Yeah, Jeffrey, I agree. I think that this is a big hurdle. So we want to keep these guys open. So I agree. I think definitely at least 3 to 5 years minimum.
Thanks, Brad. A couple of hands in the room. Hector and then Pamela.
Yeah, I do realize they're gonna not be allowed to be enclosed on all sides according to the new plan, but I believe one of the reasons they had it enclosed in some cases or most cases was because of security issues, because there were homeless and some bad characters that were hanging out in the sheds in the evenings. And a lot of these sheds are not well lit and could be a danger. There's only a matter of time before there's an incident or something's gonna happen. And I believe there was some fires that happened a little while ago in some of the sheds. So is that going to be addressed at all as far as safety issues?
So I feel like we're getting scope creep. Right. We are taking up LPC stuff under this, Hector. Those are totally germane, appropriate issues, just not for this. And I think that the Transportation Committee did take this up a while ago. I'm sure I could find you something on what the rules and regs are like. I know everybody has to lock the furniture up at night and stuff like that. It's up to the restaurant whether or not they take it inside. But certainly something we can think about. But I want to stay on this LPC topic thing. I'm sorry, Pamela.
Hi. So, my issue has been right from the beginning with the roadbed cafes. I call them sheds. And it has more to, this may be DOT and DOS, but it seems to me a fundamental question that needs to be addressed, not just by those outfits, but also by LPC, is the structural question. If you're going to have a floor and it is going to be flush with the sidewalk, how in the world are you going to have any kind of function as far as when it rains and the gutter fills up with water and debris piles up against the upstream edge of the shed and becomes a swamp and a mud hole and filled with debris, and it sits there for weeks and weeks. And sanitation, the sweeper cannot get there to clean it. The people who run the business don't clean it. And it seems to me a fundamental flaw in the design of this whole overall thing. How in the world can the city's basic function of when it rains and water moves through the gutters? That's what the gutters are for. How in the hell can this question get resolved?
I can tell you this was there were two guiding principles in the updated guidelines from DOT. And again, this is a bit of scope creep today here. Drainage and vermin. And that very much informed how you can and cannot build a floor. So a lot of the guidelines, which you didn't see here, if you go on that website, it's actually very specific as to keeping drainage flow, all that kind of stuff. I'll also note that you're going to see a huge reduction in businesses doing sidewalk cafe and roadway dining because of, again, the seasonality of the fact that frankly, it is being made less appealing to businesses on the new guidelines. I'm just speaking as a matter of fact, this is what all was said at the hearings. So, and also based on the new guidelines, far fewer businesses will be able to actually set up as they have been under sort of the COVID circumstances that allowed so many more to operate that way. There's a lot more restrictions as to which restaurant will and which will not be able to set up. So emphasizing drainage was priority, and so was the ability to address vermin, in particular those, the rats that died under the decks. So know that was a part of DOT's consideration. I guess I want to just look to the committee really quickly. Does it sound like we have a couple of key points we want to guide on? Jesse just let me know that the DOT outdoor dining application is for 4 years. I would hope we could be comfortable making that recommendation to LPC, provided maybe it stays with the same operator, right? We could put a provision in there to make sure the person's respectful of the landmark, consideration. I don't know that I heard too many other strong recommendations outside of what LPC has already really outlined. Would you say that is reasonable, David? So, do folks want to get on the record with this? Yes, I see a head nod. Inga, Paul, is that a?
Make a motion that we send a letter in support of the LPC changed guidelines with the emphasis on the issues raised today.
Pier, is that a second? Thank you. And Pamela? Head nodding. Okay. Let's take a vote. All in favor? Brad, is that a hand on the motion? Is that a question on the motion or a hand on the vote?
I just wanted to say, maybe something we might want to add is that any materials are not in public view for storage. So they're not taking it down and it's lean, you know what I mean? Maybe we just want to say that. Or the barricades aren't up against the sidewalk, because those are big concrete barricades. They got to move in and out every year. So maybe we say something about it cannot be publicly stored, you know, when it's down, something
In the
like that,
off-season.
maybe.
Brad. Marty, was that a hand or that was on your vote?
I was voting.
Thank you. So Brad, can you turn your camera on during the vote, please?
Can I have one quick?
Yep,
when
Inga, a
you
question?
You mentioned it, but I just want to make sure it's stated that, gone. It's gone. Oh my God.
Mentioned the 4 years. I
Yes,
mentioned,
it stays with the restaurant, just like BLP with the license.
and I
it
think
stays
DOT
with-
would do the same thing.
It stays with the restaurant. If the restaurant leaves, they have to reapply.
Got it.
Thank you.
Okay. All in favor on the motion? Hands up online. Excellent. Thank you, everybody. All hands up are in the room. Any objections? Present not eligible? Or abstention? Excellent. All good there?
Thank you, Dave.
And thank you, Dave, for the update and the letter and the April 16th. We'll get that in obviously before then for full board review. That concludes the formal agenda items. Carrie and I have 2 updates for you under old new business. I'm going to give the first one to her, and then I'm going to sort of ping pong with David and I on a topic that they want to bring up for next month. So Carrie, over to you.
Just to let you know what's happened since we responded to the draft scope of work for the NYCHA development proposal. We met last week with the development team, Councilmember Botcher, our HHHS co-chairs, and representatives from other elected officials to continue to try to get information on the proposed project. This is a monthly working group, so we are really pushing and using the electeds' help to get some of our questions answered. We continue to emphasize, you know, everything the board has asked for that you have seen in our letters. And like we're, for example, just starting to talk about unit size and makeup of the NYCHA housing, emphasizing square footage, and beginning to have a conversation about finances for the NYCHA unit and the affordable housing units and the market rate units. We also meet usually almost weekly as a small group, Jessica, Jesse, and the 4 co-chairs. And we are meeting again next week. So we continue to work on this almost every day.
Thanks, Carrie. Brad, is that a hand up for new business?
I think it's left
I
over.
just had a question regarding that.
Sure.
You said finances. I know in the last meeting, we did ask them, are they gonna put up a bond? So once this starts going, then all of a sudden, let's say there's a global crisis with the banking, and now we have a housing crisis because we didn't secure the funds. So I know I brought that up to related last time and the board, just wondering, I'm sure that's on the list. I'm just asking.
It was on the list.
Sorry, trying to take notes. And yes, we will make sure that we ask that, Brad. Again. Betty?
Betty?
I don't know where it fits in your small group discussions, but is anyone pushing that there be a certified voting process that can be instituted so that the residents of these places can cast an intelligent vote and be, you know, a real survey vote?
So we're asking NYCHA to present to the committees the results of the survey, and hoping that will happen very soon.
I am very skeptical about whatever it is that. we'll
Betty,
do.
we have prioritized the survey results in every single meeting we have had, and we will continue to do so. I can also say that the electeds are pushing forward as well. And that continues to be both a guiding point of our discussion and a point of contention because we haven't had the results issued. So it continues to be a major talking point and will continue to be until that information is shared with everybody.
I see that. I just have a concern about the validity of whatever data they would give you. That's all. I won't repeat it, but I just think it should be done differently. Anyway, and I thought we would put that in whatever conversations or
I'm just cautioning that we've said all of this multiple times, and I'm not trying to disrespect the topic. It's that it is in every letter that we've sent, and it's been a part of every discussion we've had on it. So I just want to flag that this evening. The questions of the survey. Yes, in fact it is, and we raised this in our draft scope of work. So, Carrie, we have some disruptions in the room, so we may have to pause in just a minute, just so you know.
Sure. Yeah. I could hear Betty, but that's all I could hear.
Thank you. Questions in the room? I want to emphasize that we don't have any other than our small group meetings at this time, like which I can tell you are driven by an extensive spreadsheet that Carrie, the other co-chairs, are all the topics that we've been putting together on this is what's driving our discussion. I also just want to emphasize that we are working to have that seat at the table and make sure that it's relevant. And in particular, making sure CB4 is a part of these discussions consistently has been our key goal. So we will continue to update. I know Jessica will give an update at exec as well as at full board on this as well. So stay tuned as we get details. We will share them with everybody. David, microphone is next to you. I want to say that last month it was brought to our attention that back in 1996, a plan that started in 1987 was established, and it was called a 197A, which is a zoning action when a community gets together and brings the city planning commission a plan for rezoning a neighborhood. CB4 is one of 2 community boards to have successfully done this, and we did it back in 96. We proposed it in 94. It was adopted with quite a few modifications in 96. Pamela referenced earlier the Chelsea plan. David had brought to me and Viren as well the idea of incorporating it into our letter. I chatted with Joe about it and a couple of others, and we sort of held off on that because there hadn't been a fuller discussion about it. And so, David, I want to give you the mic for a few because the plan is to potentially tee up a discussion of the 197A at a future committee meeting.
Right. And, you know, the language in the original 1996 plan talks a lot about neighborhood character and things that we wanted to see going forward. And I was stunned to learn in one of our meetings that there's no height limit on 9th Avenue. You know, if we're 100 feet back from 9th Avenue into the Fulton Houses site. And that's according to existing housing or existing zoning. And that seems so in conflict with the language that was in the 1996 plan that I kind of wondered what happened along the way. To what extent were CB4's plans for the zoning incorporated into the zoning that exists today? And you know, we're looking at 2 different plans that are being proposed by NYCHA related, one of which conforms to the existing zoning and one which requires a zoning change. And, you know, I just have big questions about how much even the existing zoning matches the community's intent as established over like decades. And I was hoping that we could get Joe Restuccia, who's really our zoning czar, to talk about that and the history of how the zoning evolved. You know, ideally, I'd love to see something where we could look at diagrams that show bulk and height that are as envisioned by the Chelsea zoning plans developed by the community and then as the zoning exists now, and then as it would be changed under the rezoning plan, because there are new specific FARs that are called for. So, what does that actually look like? And that would be to inform our comments going forward in the review process that's already begun, or possibly just communications with elected officials. I just feel a little bit like we're flying blind, and there were a lot of things that I found out that were new along the way.
Absolutely. And something I said to David and Beard and Pamela is that 96 plan happened. Then 2005, Special West Chelsea District was created. And then there's been numerous smaller scale rezonings along the way. So how do we begin to understand sort of the current zoning map in the neighborhood, how that all came about, what is relevant to the 96 plan versus 2005 versus the smaller scale zonings that happened all in between that time frame. So while David has asked Joe to sort of come, Joe is committed to being a part of a wider discussion on this. But I've sort of asked David and Co to potentially come up with summarizing something. Obviously, don't have capability to put together the massings or anything like that, but hopefully something that we can have for the committee to digest to begin to understand these. And if that happens, we can bring that back to an agenda and have a fuller discussion on this, because I think there's a lot to learn.
Yeah,
For many reasons
what
also.
I've been hoping for was a presentation from Joe to a joint meeting.
Yes, so I just want to be very clear. Joe will not be presenting on this. He'll be a part of a discussion. He is co-chair of the Housing Committee. He's a member of the Hell's Kitchen Land Use Committee. They have huge projects underway right now. So he is committed to being a part of a discussion. He will not be putting together a presentation. So that would be incumbent on members of our committee to come up with that if that's something they want to do.
Well, he's willing to work with us. Has he been asked?
Yes, in fact, David, as I said to you earlier, I had a long phone call with him today. I know Jesse spoke to him also, and he was on all the emails that we exchanged back and forth. He is not willing to put together a presentation. He would be a part of the discussion in an additive manner.
Okay.
Pamela.
Could that take place in a joint meeting with CLU and HHHS?
You can propose that. We are happy to take that back.
Please.
I have to say it is not as germane to HHHS as it would be to land use. So there may be resistance to having it as a joint committee meeting, but happy to bring that back.
Got it.
Thank you. Brad and then Mike. Oh, Mr. Noble, you're up.
Yeah, hi. Hey, just to share a quick anecdote with you guys, to let you know what goes on here at Elliott Houses. Yesterday afternoon at 2:30, a pipe broke on the 11th floor next door to me. The building, the one building.
Mike, can I apologize to cut you off, but we are about to wrap up any business and we'll go to sort of the public session of our meeting, which it sounds like you're queuing into.
Well, just
general comments.
Just one
on
quick
anything.
thing. One quick thing. Let me tell you, the pipe broke at 2:30, and the entire A line was flooded all the way to the lobby. By 9:30, nobody had shown up from NYCHA to turn off the water or help. Just letting you know the kinds of conditions that we face daily here. Okay, that's the infrastructure we're talking about, and that's all I have to say.
Appreciate that, Mike. I think that David, Vera, and Pamela, Carrie, me will continue to talk about how we bring a 197A Chelsea plan discussion to the committee. And with that, if there's no other additional bits of new or old business, I do want to open it up to members of the public, sort of our public session of the evening. Comments will be timed and limited to 2 minutes. And if you'd like to speak on a topic, you can line up over here. Or actually put them over there. That's perfect. With the mic over there, that's perfect. We have full camera view. When you speak, as I mentioned, we'll be timing comments. They'll be limited to 2 minutes. Please say your name. because we don't have a sign-up sheet in advance, what we're going to ask folks to do is say your name and then begin speaking, and I'll start the 2 minutes on the clock. Jackie, are you starting? Alexis? Okay.
Hi.
Hi. State your
hi.
name.
My name is Alexa Cruz. I'm a resident from NYCHA since 1969. I don't want Rat Pad. And I don't want them to get rid of Section 9. And there was an incident in my neighborhood with the security that their essence related as, and I happened to, caught their attention because I thought there was a child up in the window hanging, and I told them, and I explained to them that I think there's a child out looking out the window, that they should check up on it, and they ignored me, and I had to call the 911. If they would have followed up, they would have found out that it was a flag that was hanging, and this is the money that's invested for NYCHA, so that so these security people from Alliance don't do nothing. When you ask them to do something for you and follow up, I mean, I felt like a fool when the officers came and they told me it was a flag, but I'm glad it wasn't a child. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Alexis. Thank you for being here. Next person, please state your name, and I'll restart the clock.
So I'm speaking in Danielle's behalf. My name is Daniel Ramirez. I live in the Fulton houses. I stand here as one, but I'm here representing my household of 4, all over the age of 18. None of us want demolition. My wife has multiple health conditions who requires the assistance of a home attendant. And the reason she is not here now, both of my sons also have health conditions, which make it difficult for them to be here. One of my sons also have a home attendant. This is one of the many reasons we do not want demolition. This will cause unnecessary inconveniences. It will cause immense emotional distress on all of us. As head of household, it's my responsibility to protect my family. I need them to be well and undisturbed. We are happy and at peace in our present living condition. Forcing us out of our home will be and feel demeaning. Please help me to protect and maintain the stability of my family. Alliance Security cannot provide this type of protection for us. In truth, they have no purpose here. There is no enhanced security as Related is claiming. They are here just for show and have been nothing but a joke, a clown show. No demolition. Let's be part of the solution and stop feeding the beast.
Thank you, Daniel. Appreciate it. Next speaker, please state your name and then I'll start the clock.
Yes. So
Okay, I get it.
Yeah.
Just say their name, please, Salinas.
Oh, this is Tejada Santa. She's been raising her grandson on her own since he was a baby. He's 11 years old now. And she's been living in the Fulton houses for over 30 years. She does not want demolition. Our buildings are strong and sturdy. They are not falling apart as they are claiming. We only need maintenance. I've been to a CB4 meeting before, and I want to make sure that I'm not forgotten. Help us to stay in our homes.
Thank you.
It's Luis. Oh yeah, he's outside. Does anybody want to go?
Next speaker, please state your name. I'm going to keep this moving, folks. Thank you, everybody. Please state your name, and we'll start the clock for the 2 minutes.
Cesar Gold, and I've lived in Elliott Chelsea houses for a couple of decades now. I've lived in many cities, Miami, Los Angeles, and many nice apartments. And these Elliott Chelsea apartments are top quality. They're the same quality as Penn South. Would Penn South residents move out of their apartments into an 80-20 cardboard wall where the building where the stoves and refrigerators are now in your living room. You don't even have a separate kitchen. We don't even have closets. No, these are top quality buildings. They're bomb-proof, fireproof. You can't build them anymore. These are mid-century modern high-rise buildings. And the text this morning I had is Waters spoke for Godfrey's office, who selected her when they managed our tenant association. This guy here, Jeffrey LaFrance, he worked in Godfrey's office as Godfrey's legal counsel when they managed our tenant association, when their office appointed Waters, and Waters, as our TA, speaks for Godfrey's office. And I think now that the borough president is running it now. I can't confirm that. But anyway, when Selena said the last time, 70% did not vote to move homes, and she said 30% participated in the survey. Well, only at most 50% of that 30% voted for the fake new proposed buildings, meaning that at best, 85% of residents voted to
10
keep
seconds,
their homes. Though when we use Norman Siegel's numbers showing 18% and half of those voted for the fake proposed building, this means 92% of residents voted to keep their homes.
Thank you, Caesar.
And who wouldn't keep their homes in New York City?
Thank you, Caesar.
You know it.
We'll go to the next speaker.
Shame on you for proposing this and letting this fraud go on.
Thank you,
Seriously.
Caesar. Appreciate your
Shame on you.
participation this evening. I also need to correct the record. I am not a lawyer. I've never provided legal counsel, even in the time I worked for Assemblyman Gottfried. Next speaker, please. Salinas, if you could just state your name, please.
Yes.
Or whomever you're speaking for, please state their name.
Okay.
Thank you.
His name is Luis Sanabria. He lives in Fulton for over 50 years. I am the handyman in Fulton and have been inside many apartments, including Jackie Lara. I've done plenty of work there, including the plumbing in Jackie's apartment. As a handyman, I can assure you that our Fulton buildings are not falling apart. Help us to keep our homes, no demolition. Who's next?
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi, my name is Waiki and I'm a Fulton resident. Good evening. I have a question for the CB4 members. When you walk out of your apartment, is the hallway smelly, sticky, cigarette butt? If you have an elevator, is there pee on the floor, spit on the walls? Does the elevator go out of service almost every day? And because of that, do you hear someone crying out loud for help? Now, once you get to the lobby of your building, can I start over again?
I'm pausing the time. You can pause for a moment. We're going to be respectful of every speaker here this evening.
Caesar, yeah, you have to respect everyone. No one spoke when you spoke, so now you have to let her speak. Caesar.
We have no new business, so we can easily adjourn the meeting if the room is not in order. You may continue.
Thank you. So now once you get to the lobby of your building, are there homeless people, trespasser, making scene or acting ludicrous? Or how about someone laying outside the elevator shooting up drugs? Those who are going through this, please raise your hands. Okay, I raise my hand because me, my family, and some of my neighbors are living like this. But do we? Absolutely not. No mean to disrespect. You guys talk about saving some of the historical buildings. How about when someone gets stuck inside the elevator and not knowing if the person is an elder or disabled, then trying to figure out which floor they're on by going up or down the stairs and listening to the person distressed and extremely scared. This is called trauma. Or how about when the paramedic picked me up in a stretcher due to the size of the elevator, my daughter couldn't ride with us. She had to walk down 8 flights, not knowing if she'll bump into a homeless person or drug addict, pee, poop. This is also called trauma. We need to take care of ourselves, our neighbors. We are the ones living in these and many other extremely worse conditions and scenarios. Someone made suggestions about doing a certified voter survey. When I heard this, it was like as if I got spit on and slapped on the face.
Caesar, let her finish.
Seems like what we have, some of the residents have voiced a concern or how unhabitable their living condition is. Now their health was been deteriorated due to mold, asbestos, and lead. Seems to me we don't deserve to live better.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the comments. Next speaker, please state your name.
Oh, Jacqueline Lara, Fulton Houses. I would like to encounter that because, I don't see this problem in Fulton and I just want to see who her neighbors are. She complains so much about how she lives, but she has a right to get transferred. Everybody's getting moved around like checkerboards in Fulton. People from 2 bedrooms are going into 3 bedrooms. 3 bedrooms are going into 2 bedrooms. I know everything that's going on in Fulton. And and I'm surprised that she's even dealing with this because, she does work for HOU. Maybe later could get her an apartment somewhere else. So, I mean, if it's really that bad, really, you need to go, and we have security now, which it only could go into the lobbies because they're not peace officers. They can't do anything of going up and down the buildings. They can't be protected. I feel more protected without the securities because I know other kids there. And all these kids that come from the schools are the ones that are coming into our buildings smoking weed. And not only that, but we have a lot of residents that have houses, properties, $80,000 cars parking in our NYCHA development. And we have people that are living, that have house and still living on NYCHA because NYCHA is protecting them. And kids too, that go to nice fancy schools. So there's a lot of people that are living on big income in our NYCHA development and they're getting away with it. But then again, you want to take away our homes. I say that these people, they should move out and let us continue fighting for it. And the ones that are living in deplorable apartments, it's because they want to live that way. Thank you.
Thanks, Jackie. Next speaker. Please state your name and I'll start the time.
Oh, hi. Marnie Halassa. I just wanted to let you guys know that the city did an article March 14th. And the title of it is Eviction Filings Highest Among Private Managers of NYCHA Buildings. It said private sector managers running city-owned public housing developments dramatically accelerated the number of eviction proceedings brought against tenants for non-payment of rent. And it appears to outpace those filed against residents of developments still run by the Housing Authority. And if you read this article, March 14th, it's in the city. Apparently it says that the management firms, which currently oversee 18,000 public housing units under RAD, initiated more than 3,000 eviction proceedings against tenants from January through September of last year. NYCHA, by comparison, and this is important, manages about 148,000 units, and they only initiated 2,300 cases during all of 12 months of last year. So what that really means is that puts the rate of eviction proceedings in RAD complexes
The highest in the city out of all buildings, actually. Number 2019?
You could, she's going to finish her statement. Thank you.
Yeah, it's something like NYCHA's rate of eviction is like 1 out of 72 apartments, and the private manager, it's 1 out of 6. Yeah, so yeah. So, and also, you know what, I've been talking to some lawyers. What I don't understand is why, like maybe the Section 9 leases should be grandfathered in, and maybe that's something that you guys could specifically fight for. And also, I think Miguel Acevedo has one of those expensive cars in the parking lot. Like, I think he has a BMW in the parking lot. I just wanted to end with that because that's telling. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other speakers tonight?
We have some people online, Jeffrey. as
Okay,
well.
thanks, Carrie. We'll have Jesse's going to switch sides of the room as soon as we go to online. Salinas, if you could state your name and pull a little closer so we can get you on camera.
I'm Salinas Miranda. I live in the Elliott buildings and I love my community. I love my home. Stinky buildings do not require demolition. Stinky buildings require better maintenance. I've been to the Fulton houses to petition, and I have yet to see the drug addict that they claim are always there. Improvement does not require demolition. Waikiki, the person that just gave testimony now, just proved that Alliance security isn't accomplishing anything. How come security isn't taking care of the homelessness? Please open your eyes. It's all narrative, no demolition. Waiki is a Fulton tenant, also on the TA board of Fulton and an HOU worker. She's on related payroll, and HOU role on our campus have been to promote demolition. The proposal have not been neutral. Please, open your eyes, no demolition.
Promise rehabilitation.
Thank you, Selena. We're going to go to the folks online. There's 3 hands up online. And then our meeting will wrap. Folks, if you're going to have conversation, if we could ask you to take it outside, just because we're going to hear from people online and we want to be able to have that conversation clearly. Motoko, you were up first. Please introduce yourself. You'll have 2 minutes once you start talking.
Hi, my name is Lisa Gosens, and I'm a resident of Fulton Houses. It's funny how we have an opportunity to have better living, better housing, won't have to worry about maintenance or anything, and we can't even come together. It was a fair vote that was done, and everybody that's talking about other people selling drugs, having houses, their moms having homes in Puerto Rico, and all of these different things are the main ones that's the problem of the development, and don't want to see other people who actually need it, that's paying an arm and a leg for rent, that deserves better living, that don't want to have to worry about elevators breaking down, any type of maintenance in their homes, don't have to worry about drug dealers or drug people coming in and out of homelessness. And there's no chance that nobody would at least take the opportunity to come together. Like, we're supposed to be one. We're all residents. There's no reason to lie. We all have maintenance issues. It's in the news that housing have multi-billion-dollar repairs that need to be done. They're giving us the opportunity to make a better living for ourselves and our kids' future. And instead, we have to deal with the antics, the different roddery, and the jokes. And this is our life that we're dealing with. This is serious. Like, we need to just come together and try to come up with a solution so that we can all live better together as one. People that make billions and millions of dollars don't deal with this. They don't have to go through this. But it's us, when it comes to us having an opportunity to have a better life of living, or somebody wanting to help us to get better, we still have to live in that mentality of ignorance.
15
we have
seconds.
To do better. We have to do better.
Thank you very much. Next up is Motoko.
Oh.
Just introduce yourself and then you'll have 2 minutes.
Hello. Hi. My name is Motoko Shaboji. I am on a PTA executive board of PS33 Chelsea Prep, which is directly neighboring the new redevelopment planning. So I'm here to speak on behalf of the school community. We just really wanted to make sure, we really wanted to make sure that, I know this is going to be a very long, large development construction project, and we just wanted to really want to make sure that everything is really thoughtfully planned and executed during the construction. For example, our school will be in the shade if the design is not carefully done. So I would really request to have a daylight and sun studies during the scoping and design period. And also during the scoping period, please do a really good traffic study, because there are a lot of school buses that comes. There is also PS 138, which is the District 75, the student with disabilities. So they are very sensitive. So please do make sure that all the construction does not affect the school operation. And also because of this, the long development, I also wanted to know if they have been studying about how the population will affect the population of the schools, because I don't know if there is a capacity for new kids, and maybe that might require some capital construction. I would love to speak with you. And if you can set aside some time to talk with us, that would be great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We did include all of the things that you mentioned in our scope letter. So they are in there and we'd be happy to meet with you. I can no longer hear you, Jeffrey.
Okay, you can hear me
Oh,
now?
yes, I can.
There we go. Tom, you have the final 2 minutes of the evening. Please introduce yourself and I'll start the clock.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. I was on the community board from 1997 to 2003 when the Chelsea rezoning plan, which was the 197C plan that was based on the 197A plan that a professor of mine worked with CB4 on and got published in 1996. The rezoning, the 197C, was done in 1999. And in that plan, there was a carve out of the NYCHA properties. They were not put in a contextual zone because at that time they wanted to give NYCHA the flexibility to do whatever they wanted with that property. I think it's great that you're revisiting both the 197A and hopefully the 197C. I wrote a minority report that was signed by 10 of the board members in 99, where we would only support the rezoning of Chelsea if they followed more closely to the 197A plan. There was a lot of compromising done, and basically you'll find all that material in the files, I'm sure, hopefully. Joe Restuccia was on the board when I was on the board, so if anyone needs to contact me, I have a pretty good memory and I still have some files if you're missing any files. So I can help you with that discussion. And I just wanted to also thank you again for all your support for former Colored School number 4. And unfortunately, I dialed in after the presentation, but I'll look it up on YouTube. Again, thank you for all the hard work you're doing for Chelsea.
Thanks, Tom. And right on time with the timer. Appreciate that. And I like the applause in the room as well. Thank you, guys. Carrie, any other final comments from you? Otherwise, we'll wrap up here as well.
Not for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. That's a motion to adjourn. Is there a second from Inga? Thank you, everybody online. Thank you, everybody in the room. We will see you all next month.
Good night, everybody.